Hey everybody. So today we are talking with Moon, who is a variety streamer on Twitch. She sort of like plays whatever she wants. She just recently, like a few months ago, got affiliate. And in this talk we talk about identity. So basically, like, throughout Moon's life, she has sort of like adopted identities based on like sort of like wanting to fit in, and found that it was always sort of like a temporary high, that she never really like found fulfillment, like long-term fulfillment from doing that. And so like recently in her life she's sort of like been working on like adopting her own identity based on like what she wants, and the sort of like struggles that come with that, and like the hurdles that she's sort of overcoming that come with that. And then also we talk about how like she's started like falling into slumps that where like she just sort of like doesn't want to exist, and sort of like why that might be, and then possibly like how to move forward. So I hope you enjoy, and here we go. Hello.
Hi.
So first things first, what would you like me to call you as we talk today?
Moon is fine.
Moon. Okay, cool. Moon Public Tantra. What's the date? 10/22/21. Okay. All right. So, Moon, what is there anything in particular that you would like to talk about today?
Um, Not particularly.
Okay.
I'm down for whatever roller coaster you want to go on.
Cool, cool. Well, so the reason that I initially reached out, Moon, is because I saw that you were posting about some sort of like mental health struggles on Twitter, and um, uh, basically like the reason that I do these is to sort of like try to provide value to like people in my community, and like communities that I care about and that sort of thing. And so um, I thought maybe we could start there.
Yeah, sounds great.
So talk to me about what's been going on for you.
Um, so I've just been in a rut. I honestly my mental health is a roller coaster. I've been dealing with it for a while since
Mm.
oh God, like 20 years. Whoa, makes me sound old. um, but yeah, so I just go through some lows, and sometimes the lows are very low. Um, and I use Twitter as kind of like a place to like share, because I know that a lot of people understand and feel the same way. So I want them to also feel validated in their emotions.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah.
Cool. So yeah, it's cool that you do that, because I think that in a lot of ways this is similar. That like by us talking like this, we're sort of like other people that watch can like relate, and like like get value out of like what we talk about. So it's like sort of a similar thing.
Right, yeah.
So Moon, when you say like your mental health has been like a roller coaster for like the last 20 years, can you like elaborate that on that a little bit for me? Like what sort of what are the lows sort of look like?
Um, the lows are I don't take care of myself. I sleep a lot. I sleep, 14, 15 hours a day, which
Mm,
is really hard when I have a full-time job.
indeed.
But
How,
I
how do you how
I
do you
I
do you
figure it
just
out.
miss work? How do you pull that off?
Um, I I so I'll work, and then I'll take my depression nap, and then I'll get some more work done. Um, but yeah, luckily, like, I work from home,
Hmm.
and my job is
Flexible.
relatively understanding and flexible, and then, like, as long as I get my work done, um, it's good, thank God. Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah, so that sounds pretty intense. That basically it sounds like everything just sort of like shuts down. Like there's just like no like motivation to do anything. Does that sound right?
anything. Yeah, nothing at all.
Gotcha.
I would much rather sleep the day away and pretty much not exist without not existing, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so is that I just got a offline follow and it showed up on the screen and it scared the poop out of me. All right, we're just gonna move on. We're just not even gonna look at it. So do you have? You said that like this has been going on for like 20 years. Do
Yeah.
you have any sense of why it might have started?
So I don't want to say I had a really messed up childhood, because my family did the best that they can with our situation. But it's also, a very cliche type thing. Like, I was bullied in school, from middle school into high school. Um, I had a very small friend group.
Mm,
Um, my mom was absent. My dad was very absent, considering I don't really know who he is. Um, so I was raised by like my grandparents, which is fine, but it's also not my actual parents. So
totally.
it's very, they, like I said, they tried, but it wasn't exactly the same, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Because like I'd have friends that, had, not absentee parents. They had parents that were there, and like you always just have this like idealization, I think is the word that I'm looking for, of
Mm-hmm.
like, I wish that like my life was like that, or what if my life was like that, or I wonder what my life would be like, essentially. um but yeah, I'm not definitely not knocking, my childhood situation, but it definitely didn't help. You know
Uh,
what I mean?
yeah. So okay. So Moon, I'm gonna poke at you for a second,
Okay.
and
Go
I'm
ahead.
I'm just gonna you had said like I don't want to say that I had a bad childhood, but then went on to say that like your parents basically were absent. Like you don't even know who your dad is and that like you got bullied a lot. So like why the resistance to saying that you had a bad childhood?
uh I just feel like there's people that definitely had it worse than me.
Hmm.
And like, I don't I don't want to seem that like I'm like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, downgrading that. You know what I mean? Because I did have a family, and like I lived with them, so like I wasn't, I didn't have it as bad as some people do, you
Sure.
know.
Sure. And so does the fact that other people have it worse than you make it so that like does does that negate your suffering?
Sometimes I feel like it does. Like, I feel like it, because it's not as bad as other people, it's almost like it doesn't, it's like, I don't want to say it's an excuse that I use, but like it's also like, um I don't like, because it's not as bad as it could be, does it really count? Like, does it really, does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense, Moon, but like here's the thing, like let's say like you were talking to a friend and they were
Yeah.
talking about like a really really hard issue that they had gone through. And then they said like, but like okay, all right, let me just like give like an extreme example, okay? So let's say like some woman like had been through some sort of like sexual assault, okay? And she was talking to you about it and she said, but like other women have been through like far worse sexual assault. Does that mean that her sexual assault is like no longer valid, like that it no longer counts?
No, it's absolutely still valid. It,
So so what
I
about for
don't
you?
like, I just feel like it's almost like a degree of imposter syndrome. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Like, because it wasn't as bad as it could be, I like I can't necessarily attest to it,
yeah.
which is wild, because your example is, it still happened. It's still relevant. It's still part of your history.
Yeah.
But
And and so Moon, like what do you think it does to a person who's like trying to deal with their issues if there's this like part of themselves that's saying like your issues don't count because others had it worse?
I mean, it definitely sucks.
Yeah, right? It makes them like impossible to deal with because like
Right.
in a way like you're not acknowledging them. Like
Right.
it's almost like a form of denial.
Right. I was just gonna say, like, it's definitely a form of denial in a
Yeah.
sense.
And now that I've sort of I don't know, now that like we've sort of like walked through it or whatever, this is like a soapbox that I get in all the time is that like that I get on all the time that like I think that we in our society we like gatekeep suffering a lot, that like if someone has privilege it means that they're not allowed to suffer, and that's not to say that like people that have less privilege shouldn't like receive more empathy and shouldn't like we shouldn't like seek to help them more, but like at the same time like I think that everyone deserves compassion no matter like what level of trauma they go through, because like everyone suffers. So like I'm a straight white man, like how, well, I'm not straight, but I'm a white man, like how lucky, I'm a straight presenting white man, how lucky can like one guy get? But like I still have my crap, and like I think that I still deserve compassion for it. So like you're a woman, and so like that already means that like you have to deal with more stupid crap that men don't have to deal with. So like I just want to sort of like going into this conversation try to sort of disarm that mechanism of like, well, like it doesn't count because other people have had it worse. Like no, like if you had a tough childhood, like you had a tough childhood, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'll try my best.
And even if like if it comes up and you're like during the conversation, if it comes up and you're like, I want to talk about this but I feel like I don't know, like I don't deserve it, or like I like other people have had it worse, like that's a great thing to bring up during the conversation.
Okay. Okay.
So um talk to me about bullying.
Okay. Where do you want me to start?
I don't know what like stories have a lot of power. So like if when I say talk to me about bullying, if like a story pops into your head, it's a great place to start.
Um, I mean, I've buried. I can't even speak English apparently. I've buried a lot of it because I think about. But I'd like to say that I'm an ugly duckling. I was not like I was cute when I was like a kid, but
Mm,
like I wasn't popular, like I wasn't as attractive as like the kids I grew up with. So like I definitely got bullied a lot about that.
mm,
Um so like I definitely like blossomed and grew into myself
yeah,
essentially. So I mean, I still have like body image issues like now, and like body dysmorphia and all of that stuff. But that bullying definitely I feel like led to that.
yeah.
Um, but like I had glasses, I had, you know, buck teeth pretty much. Like I was just your typical nerdy girl that was bullied on by the popular kids, and it's like it's very cliche. But it
There it
definitely
is again.
happened. Yeah. It is. It's there.
Yeah.
Um and like I had a friend that was like super popular, and I always had this thing, like I was like, you know, make me popular, like make me whatever, and I just like I
Like
realized
Elphaba and
now.
Galinda.
Yeah, like I was like, just talk me up and make me feel like, not make me feel, but make me look great, so everyone wants to be my friend, and like just wanting that, and like looking back on that, I'm like, girl,
Yeah.
girl, you're so much better off being the weirdo that you are. You know what I mean? And like I mean that in the nice way. Like me, being a weirdo is just me. Like you can see from my background, I'm chaotic and nerdy, and
Yeah.
that's me, and it's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So like what I'm hearing you say is that like you weren't sort of the like stereotypical like pretty popular girl.
Right.
And so because of that like a lot of people sort of like bullied you about the way that you looked, and it caused all sorts of sort of like body image issues for you. Um,
Hmm.
and then even like you actually had a friend who did sort of fit into that archetype, and there was this sort of like desire that she would sort of like glam you up and sort of like make you into one of those popular girls so that you could like fit in and like be one of those popular girls.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. And I mean, not cool that that happened, but cool that we have an understanding. And and then what about oh man, I lost it. It was you had talked about the bullying, and then you had talked about oh, and then like what was it like what was it like with your parents, like with like growing up with your grandparents, like what was that like, how was that, tell me about that.
um, I mean, like I said, I feel like they did like the best that they could.
Hmm.
Like um, my mom, like my biological mom, she was just very not ready to have a child, and I was actually a what's the word I'm looking for? Like she got pregnant and had me in hopes that like this person that she was in love with would stay with her, essentially. Um,
Wow.
which is funny because she was also having sexual relations with multiple people at the same time, so she doesn't know who my dad is.
Hmm.
But she told me growing up that it was this one person. But she, as I got older and understood, she was like, I don't know. But yeah, she got pregnant with me in hopes that this person that she loved would stay, and that didn't exactly happen. And
Yeah.
if anything, he ran away faster.
Yeah.
Um, but she definitely was not ready to have a child. So she did kind of leave me in the care of her parents, my grandparents, and my aunt, who I now call my mom because she is pretty much my mom now. She raised me, she took care of me, she treats me like the daughter she never had, essentially. So she's my mom now. Like when I say my mom, like that's who I'm talking about most often than not. So
Yeah.
like whenever I talk about my biological mom, I'll say my biological mom.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so like they tried, they didn't really get it, like raising raising a kid in the 90s is not the same as, raising a kid in the 70s, and like so they they tried to figure it out. It was harder. But like I said, they did the best they could. It's just they weren't my parents,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah. So one, I just want to, because I think it's lovely. I just want to call attention to like when you started talking about your aunt. I just like I saw you light up, and like I just thought it was really lovely. Um,
no.
and then the other thing that that I've been noticing is that you use this phrase when you're talking about your parents a lot, which is like they did the best that they could, which I love that you're like extending empathy to them. In no way am I here to like bash your parents by any means. Um, but I do feel like the phrase like did the best that they could means that like from a personal perspective, like from like your own perspective, like it means that they didn't do a good enough job, like that they didn't do what they were supposed to for you.
Um, I don't want to say that they didn't do what they were supposed to. I just feel like they weren't quite as understanding, if that makes sense. Like they were very like old school. So like I couldn't necessarily show a lot of emotion
Hmm.
and like and necessarily, be myself 100%. You know what I mean? Like I had to um I don't want to necessarily like say that I had to put on a facade, but like it almost felt that way. You know what I mean? Like I had to um be more like in like keep things
You weren't,
inside.
yeah, you weren't
Yeah.
allowed to like express who you really wanted to be.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm curious because with both of these scenarios, with both the like bullying and with your parents, there's been this sort of like description of like sort of like wanting to have what other people had, which like it makes total sense to me of like, you know, not growing up with parents that like were allowing you to sort of express yourself and then not fitting into the sort of like stereotypical like popular girl mold, that you would really crave that and like want to fit in. And so I'm curious, whenever I sort of see like patterns like this, I always wonder if they're related to the sort of like modern day, because a lot of times they sort of things sort of carry over when they go unresolved. And so I'm curious about like when you fall into these funks where you sort of just like lose all motivation, is this feeling of like not fitting in or like wanting to have what others have and like feeling like something is missing, is that present in the funk that you fall into?
Um, maybe I haven't really thought of it like that.
And like I'm just this is totally like me just throwing out like a hypothesis. So like
Yeah.
if it doesn't land, like if you're like no, I don't think so, like that's totally fine and like you know
Yeah.
no problem. But
No,
but
no, no.
I just like I I think that a lot of the time what'll happen is like we'll sort of get these old I'm trying to think of a different way to describe this than I normally do, and I don't think that I can. So basically what happens is that like when we go through something hard like not having parents when we're growing up or like being bullied because we're not like the stereotypical popular girl, that sort of stuff like stays with us. And interestingly enough, it sort of like creates like a carbon copy of whatever we went through. And then like as we go through life, our brain is really really good at like recalling. And so like what'll happen is like the sort of classic example that I learned was when you go to a place that you've never been before and you go to use the toilet, like how do you know how to use that toilet? And it's weird. It seems weird, but the reason why is because your brain is like, "Oh, like we've been here before. We know this."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then you know how to use the toilet. So similarly, the same sort of thing happens when like similar events happen later in life that like don't actually have the same stakes that they did when you were younger, but like because those things come up and your brain is like, "Oh, like we know this." Then it like sends you into that spiral and like all of that like that carbon copy is like perfectly preserved with like all of the emotions and all of the like reactions that originally came up. And so I'm wondering if like these like downward slumps that you experience aren't sort of like triggered by when something comes up where you're like, "Oh, like I'm feeling bullied here," or like I'm feeling like I don't fit in here, or I'm feeling like I want something that others have, or I'm feeling like someone
Um,
did the best that they could.
right. Yeah. I mean, I guess like I don't think that it would necessarily be the trigger that triggers the spiral, but I feel like it it could be like after like I'm already on my way down, like something that I think about that like continues to
perpetuates
spiral.
it.
Yeah, that
For
would
sure.
make sense.
For sure. And so that's great, like, feedback is the word that's coming to mind. So do you have any inkling of what kind of things do trigger the downward spirals, or do they seem totally random?
Um, it's something that I'm working on
Hmm?
to figure them out. But at this point in time, I don't. They seem random. They're probably not random, but it's not something that I mentally notice.
Sure.
Um, yeah.
Sure. Cool. And how's modern life?
Um, hard.
Tell me about that.
um, I feel like it's it's a lot of wanting to fit in and figuring it out, and social media is dangerous,
Yeah.
especially for someone like with my mental need to be like there, you
To
know what I
fit
mean?
in.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I can
social media is bad.
I can yeah.
uh but it's like it's addicting. It's a problem, and I know that it is, but here I am. So like it's something that I'm definitely working on, because I know that it's bad. um so like when I turned 30, it was like a light switch.
Hmm.
I don't know how else to explain it, but like I hit 30 and I was like, you know what? I don't care. And like part of me does still care, but I've gotten to this point where I'm just like, I have friends, I have in who I need in my life, and I'm now just figuring it out and just going with it and letting the tide carry me, I guess.
Well, firstly, let me say that I can't believe you're 30. You don't look
Well,
30.
31. I'm 31.
You don't look 30. You look way younger. Like, my goodness.
Thanks.
And then secondly, so can you tell again, like, we're like there's juice here. So, like, can you tell me more about, like, what what your experience of, like, wanting to fit in the modern day is like?
Um, I post a lot on social media.
Mm,
I used to call myself a chameleon,
mm,
essentially, that like I would change myself a lot um to what was, you know, hip, and because the kids use the word hip. um but because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know, you know, what I enjoyed. I was so used to liking what people told me to like, or liking what other people like, and just picking and putting all of these things into a basket and making that me. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Um and so like I like in my teens and my 20s, like that was my life. Like I was just like, this is that person likes that, so I'm gonna like that.
Mm,
And like I said, like I hit 30 and I switched that switch, and I was like, you know what, I like this is gonna be like, this is it. This is what I like. This is, you like it or you don't, like, I'm sorry, like, I am who I am. um but sometimes it comes back and I'm like, oh well, not everyone really likes that, so like, is that something that I should like? Or um just, yeah.
yeah.
It's always like you said, it's like it's there, it's in the back of my head, and sometimes it'll poke out and it'll be like, hey, don't forget, not everyone likes that. Are you
Y-
sure you want to like that?
Yeah. I think that's a really sort of scarily accurate representation of like what that voice is like.
Yeah.
Um, and like what I'm really hearing you say is that like up until just recently, up until that switch flicked, uh, you just like you didn't really have an identity. Like your identity
Right.
was this sort of like moldable, shiftable thing. And can you tell me a little bit about like do you have any sense of like what caused that switch to flick? Like how did you all of a sudden like you had no identity for like 20 years and then all of a sudden like now you're like, "You know what? I'm going to be me." Like how'd you do that?
I don't I just I don't even know. Like I just did it. Like I don't want to say I woke up one day and I was like, this is it,
Yeah.
because I feel like it was 30 years in the making. Like it was just 30 years of getting sick of the shit, excuse my language.
No, no, no.
uh
Tell me more about that. What getting sick of what shit?
like getting sick of you know putting all these different things in a basket that weren't me,
Yeah.
like that I just enjoyed because other people enjoyed them and I wanted those people to like me,
Yeah.
you know
Yes.
and it
So,
yeah.
but I'm a little confused because like, because you were saying like, like I want what those girls have, or like I want the like family that these people have, and so then all of a sudden like you wake up and like 30 years in the making, like you're going through this like putting things in the basket and like uh I like sort of shifting your identity based on that, and then like all of a sudden you're like you're sick of having to like change yourself in order to like attempt to get those things.
I don't want to say that I don't want those things. I just I I
Were you
I
getting them?
didn't I didn't make it my identity.
Yeah.
Is You know what I mean? Like I feel like it was 30 years of that.
Did
Like
it
it was just,
did it work?
what do you mean?
The putting the molding of your identity, the like just constantly putting like whatever people wanted into your identity, did it give you those things that you wanted?
Um at the time it did, but thinking back on it now, like a lot of those, friends that I had, they weren't real friends. They liked me for someone I wasn't,
Yeah.
and they weren't, you know, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, and like relationships that I were in, or that, um, they weren't, they weren't healthy,
Yeah. So
you know?
what I'm almost hearing is that it was almost like a high. Like it was like an artificial substance that you were sort of like injecting in order to like feel this temporary belonging, but that like when it actually like when you actually looked at it, when you actually got like the full picture, like it wasn't real, it wasn't full, it didn't actually give you like what you were ultimately seeking.
Yeah. Like looking back on it, that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
It's like I wasn't in a good spot. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have real friends. Like I mean I had a select few, but like the friends that I had because I changed parts of me,
Mm.
they weren't real friends. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And yeah.
All right, Moon. I'm gonna throw a hard one at you. You ready?
Okay.
So, who are you?
I'm me, man. I don't even know how to explain that. I am who I am. I'm the nerdy girl that likes video games and anime and Korean food, and it just not being like, I like to dress in black and do my makeup and just be me.
Love that. Love that. And what has your experience been like in terms of like we were just talking about how the like putting, things into your identity, like injecting things into your identity sort of gave this like false high. What have things been like since you've started being you?
It's almost freeing.
Yeah.
Like it's like I'm still like picking and like putting things in this basket, but I'm picking things that I like, and I'm picking things that I want to enjoy and that I want to experiment with, not stuff that other people talk about. And so I'm like, oh, I should try that because, that person likes that. It's very much me and my rules and my guidelines, and I'm figuring me out.
Yeah. And what is it? Because before, like the motivation, because what I'm hearing you say, which is cool, is that like now like you're still putting things in your basket, but before the motivation was because like you wanted to fit in. What do you think the motivation is now?
Um, I want experimenting, learning, it, seeing. It's almost like seeing things through a different perspective.
Hmm.
Because like I'll see things that excite me and like that I want to learn and like or experience, and like so it's me making the decision rather than being influenced by something else, by like an outside source, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm feeling a diagram coming on. I'm getting like a diagram in my head. Okay. So I'm a terrible artist, but I insist on drawing diagrams because I
That's
think that they're
fine.
cool. So what I'm hearing is that before there were I'm gonna draw a popular girl. Wait, hold on. You're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. Okay, so there's like a popular girl, and then there's, and I'm just gonna, you won't be able to see this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm just gonna put like a
Okay.
little, it's too tiny, but I'm gonna do a nose ring. All right, and then okay, and then so okay, and then this, and then this, and then like a little basket. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that before, this is my diagram. Wait, hold on. There we go.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what I'm hearing you say, this is you. This is you.
Okay.
What I'm hearing you say is that before you were taking things and putting them in your basket because like you wanted to like fit in with these popular girls, and
Mhm.
now you've discovered this almost like you've discovered this part of you that actually that like you can put things like this part this you can like put things in the basket, and then like this part sees it, and like certain things will like resonate with that part of you, and you're like oh like the true me likes this, I'm gonna keep this, and
Yeah.
then like you'll try something else and you're like nah, true me isn't into this.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
fascinating. I
Yeah.
love that.
It's great.
Yeah,
It's great.
that sounds
I
awesome.
I recommend everyone try that.
Totally.
Just listen to you. No one knows you better than you,
All right,
you know?
I'm gonna throw out another hypothesis.
Okay.
When you hit your slumps, do you I don't know how to like I don't know how to ask this question good. I think I'm just gonna
Just
ask. I think I'm just
just
gonna ask it
ask it.
bad. I'm gonna ask it bad.
Okay.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. So when you hit your slumps, is something in this diagram getting off? Like, is something in this like are you putting things in your basket from other people again? Is that voice that you were talking about, like, does that voice get like really loud and it's like, oh, like other people don't like this, and then like you slump? Is it that like you tried putting something in your basket for the true you, and like the true you was like, ah, I don't like that, and like it,
Yeah, I think that could work. I think that makes sense. I think it's also a lot of like, if I'm trying something and I'm not good at it immediately,
Mm.
it's I I don't want to say I hate it, but I hate
Yeah.
it.
I think you should
You
say you
know?
hate it.
Or like I'm going to use this phrase a lot, but like I just get imposter syndrome. Like it's just I feel like I'm, you know, talking or doing something that I don't know anything about, and like even though I know a lot about it, and like I just it's yeah, I just feel like I'm bullshitting even though I'm not bullshitting, you know?
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about your sort of experience of imposter syndrome? Like, do you have any like examples you can think of?
Um, I
Mhm.
mean,
If not, that's okay. I know I'm sort of putting you on
I
the spot.
no, you're fine. My brain doesn't compute well. Um, I just like music and like video games and like things that like I thoroughly enjoy
Mm.
and like have an opinion on. Like if you know, like somebody comes at me and like tries to have this debate about it, like I will immediately like shut down and like question if like especially if like the views are opposing,
Mhm.
I'll question if I'm actually correct in how I feel and how um like I've processed whatever I've processed, and like if it's not, because if it's not the same, like yeah, I'm wrong, maybe I'm, you know what I mean, even though it's my experience and how I resonate with whatever it is I'm talking about. It's I always have this feeling of like, well, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm hearing there is like, sorry, there's a bunch of different pieces that I'm sort of.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that I just
No, no,
throw
no,
all
no,
this at
no.
you and I'm
It's
like,
good.
figure it
It's
out.
it's good. It's good. I have to compute. Um, so the first thing that I want to say is that like it totally makes sense to me because a lot of people sort of, I mean, I think that everyone does the sort of thing that you did to a certain extent where they sort of like will try to will like put different things in their into their identity based on others in order to sort of try to like fit in and be a part. But I do think that it was sort of like a bigger part of your life than it may be for other people. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that like if that switch flicked where you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna be me. Like when you were 30, like your identity is like it's a baby. Like it just started growing, and so it makes a lot of sense to me that like when people if people challenge that, if you know you're talking about something that you're really passionate about and then someone comes up and is like that's not right, it makes a lot of sense to me that you'd be like, oh, like maybe it's not right because like it's brand new, it's this like fragile, like it's like the three little pigs, it's like the house of straw, like it's definitely
Right,
not the brick house yet. And so
right.
so that makes a lot of sense to me. And then also like I also do think that like the most dangerous people in the world are the people that when their thoughts and opinions are challenged are like, no, I'm always right. Like
Yeah,
those are like the worst people ever. So I think that it's good that like that you still have that like flexibility. And the part that is the part that's a bummer is that like it seems like instead of just being like, oh, like this piece, like this thing that I put in my basket, like maybe I should look at this thing that I put in my basket and like examine it and like see if I agree with like their assessment. It seems like instead of that, it's almost like all of a sudden you start questioning this entire thing.
Yeah.
Instead of just looking at, so like in, like for instance, like with music, like someone, you know, disagrees with you about an opinion that you have on music, instead of just being like, oh, like maybe I should look at that thing about music, you're like, oh, like I must be like wrong and like broken, or like I must have like my identity is now fractured because of this questioning. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, what do we do about that?
I don't
know. Great answer. So,
throw my whole identity out the window. No, I'm just kidding.
So, well, okay. So I think that like the if I could suggest something, I think that the first thing that I would suggest is that it sounds like what's happening is that each time you sort of add a new piece to your identity, it's sort of like working in reverse, where instead of you adding a new piece to your identity, you're sort of adding your identity to the new piece. Does that make sense? So like your whole self is like slipping into this skin of like this music that you're passionate about, or like, you know, this food that you really like, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so then it makes perfect sense that somebody comes along and is like, hey, I don't like that. And you're like, I don't even want to exist anymore because this person just told me that something that like I just put my whole identity into, they don't like. Like it makes perfect sense that like all of a sudden like I wouldn't want to do anything. Like if someone told me like I don't like your existence, I don't like you just, you know, as a person, I'd feel like I don't want to be here. I want to sleep and not exist.
Yeah.
And so then like and then you come out of it because then there's like there's a new sort of like skin to slip into.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that a helpful step possibly is working on noticing when you sort of slip in, because I think that like I said, I think that like trying out those new things and being like, hey, True Me, do you like this? And then True Me being like, oh yeah, I like that. And then you're like, ooh, like let's get spicy, True Me. I think that's great. That's awesome. And I think that starting to notice like the difference, and I don't even know if you've experienced this, I'm curious. The difference between like when somebody says like I don't like this, somebody at my work is calling me at 7 p.m. Excuse you? Do you know who are you? Get out. Okay, I'm sorry. All right. So so like I'm curious if you've experienced this of like instead when someone says like I don't like this, it doesn't mean or like this is bad, and it's something that you like or that you think is good, it doesn't mean that you are bad. And my impression is that right now, like if I said like, oh, like nose rings are the worst thing since Hitler, that you would be like, I'm a terrible person.
Be like, oh, I gotta get rid of these now.
And by the way, I love nose rings. My wife has a nose ring, so I don't want you to think I don't like. No, I've commented on the nose ring a couple of times, so I didn't want to make you self-conscious. But no, I love nose rings. But so like, does that resonate with you? Does that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I feel like that definitely makes sense. That definitely. I feel like I take it one step further, and I'm like, oh, so you don't like that part of me, so that means that all of me is wrong, and why is all of me wrong? Like,
right.
why
Right. And so one of the like sort of, I don't know. I I feel like if Tentacle Tantras had a meme, it would be a meme of me like in a therapy pose, and it'd be like notice, and then like dot dot dot, because like I always tell people to notice things.
Yeah.
And so for this episode of Tentacle Tantra, what I would what I would encourage you to notice is try to notice when someone criticizes something that you really like. Try to like get some distance from it. Try to detach from it. So like if I said I don't like your nose ring, instead of saying like, oh, like I'm bad, he doesn't like me, he doesn't, try to look at it as like, oh, like he doesn't like this thing. And by doing that, you're sort of like you then have the power to say, oh, but like I still like this thing, instead of like it. The metaphor that's coming to mind is that like if someone throws a rock at this thing, this thing might shatter. Like it might, you might decide like, okay, like it's gone. But if someone throws a rock and like you are in this thing and it shatters, then like you're forked. Like you got nothing. You're done.
Yeah.
And so the more that you can sort of notice and like detach from that, I think that I have a hypothesis that these slumps might start to decrease. And the thing is that you're gonna fail a lot because this is just how you've lived your whole life. And so like even if you can't detach from it, even noticing like, oh, like I'm super caught in this thing and I feel like someone just threw a rock directly at me instead of throwing a rock at this thing, even that is a great step in the right direction. What do you think about that?
I'm intrigued.
Okay. That's good. That honestly, I think that's the best result. Because if you like adopted it wholeheartedly, if you were like, yes, that is it, that I would be worried that you were doing exactly what we're talking about. Do you know what I mean?
I'm gonna put that in my basket.
Yeah, exactly. No, not no. I'm gonna put myself into that. Like putting stuff in your basket. I'm all for it. Put stuff into your basket. But I think interestingly enough that you are actually slipping into the things that you're adopting. So yeah.
Intrigued.
Yeah, and I'm curious. Like next time one of these slumps comes up, if you can notice anything about it, if you can sort of like sniff around in there and be like, what is this? Where are you coming from? And I'm curious. I really feel like the whole idea of like not wanting to exist and like all of your motivation being gone and like just wanting to like sleep the world away. It really feels to me like you're sort of hibernating, like you're out of a skin, and so like in order to survive the like cold hard winter that you have to like weather through until you like find something new, you like hibernate and wait, and then you're like, like I found something new, and then it sort of like reinvigorates you. That's my hypothesis.
No, I like that hypothesis.
Cool.
I like that a lot. We're
coming close to the end of the hour, which is typically where I sort of try to like wrap it up. So before we sort of like go into the end game, is there anything else, like anything you want to ask me about, anything you want to like dig into a little bit more?
Not anything that isn't gonna take hours.
I'm intrigued. Throw something at me.
I'm a mess. I'm a whirlwind of a mess. Okay?
Throw something at me that you think might take hours.
my life in general. I don't know what to.
All right. All right. Well, we'll get to that part. We'll get to that's part of the end game is the your life in general. Um, so the first thing that I wanna do for the end game is I know that you are a content creator as well, and so I always like to offer the opportunity, if you would like, you don't have to, but if you would like to like plug yourself, like tell people what you do, where they can find you, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Twitch, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. I'm not an influencer on either of those. But I do like to play video games on Twitch. It's Moon Kitten with two zeros, not O's.
Cool.
Make sure to find the right one.
Is there a moon kitten with two O's?
I think there is, yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, and what kind of games do you play on Twitch?
Uh, Whatever I want to. I play a lot of like G's and Sims and like simulation games.
Hmm.
Just whatever I feel like playing is what I play.
How long have you been streaming?
Uh, so I have technically been streaming for 2 years, but the first year I didn't really focus too much on it and
Hmm?
kind of just like dabbled in it. But then COVID hit and I wanted something to do,
Hmm.
um, because I wasn't able to leave the house, you know? So I decided that I was really going to focus on streaming and enjoy it. So I hit affiliate in like 3 months. And now,
Congratulations.
thank you. So I've been an affiliate for like a year and some change. Yeah,
Cool. Cool.
and I love it.
Yeah. It.
And I'm not in a slump.
Can I tell you a quick like a quick tangent story?
Of course.
So yesterday I went to this like work event, and it was actually really nice because it was like during work hours. So like those are always way better than the ones where they try to make you anyway.
Yeah.
And I was talking to this girl who I've always really like enjoyed her, but when I was talking to her, like I said to her, like I just feel like you're so much more sort of like in yourself, and she was like, you can like say like you feel so much more pleasant, and I was like, no, like I've always really enjoyed your company. I always thought we got along really well and everything. It's just that like you just feel so much more sort of like grounded and like comfortable in yourself and like happy with like where you who you are and where you are. And she said, yeah, I think that COVID in a lot of ways sort of even though obviously, like there was lots of horrible stuff that happened, but I think that it gave a lot of us a chance to sort of like explore ourselves and explore like who we are. And so I wonder, it's interesting that I wonder about the timing of like COVID hitting and that switch flicking for you. And then
Yeah.
like even the way that you talk about Twitch of like Twitch is like I do whatever I want. Like it seems like it's another sort of tentacle of like you exploring your identity,
Yeah.
which is really heckin' cool. I like that a
Yeah.
lot. And I
Yeah.
honestly I think that Twitch is one of the best places for that. I think that Twitch gets a bad rep in a lot of ways, and like Twitch chat gets a bad rep in a lot of ways. But one thing that I will say is that I think that one thing that Twitch chat is really good at is like when people are being authentically themselves. Like Twitch chat actually can teach and has taught a lot of people like a lot about sort of like how to love their authentic self because you get so celebrated for being your authentic self on Twitch.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's what I began to use it for, was like to like branch out and put myself out of my comfort zone, and like because I'm very introverted.
Yeah.
So like streaming on Twitch is the total opposite,
Yeah.
like you're, even though you don't have people in chat, you're still creating content and entertaining other people and having to talk to people, and that's the polar opposite of me, essentially. So but it's been great. I love it. My community is great. I've become a member of so many different communities, and made so many friends, and it's great. But yeah, it's funny that you've made that connection, because I didn't make that connection, that like it happened around the same time, and like the switch flicked at the same time. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Cool. Well, the last thing that I usually like to do at the end of these public tantras is I like to sort of just give like a little summary of what we talked about, just for like one for you. Also, like after these, I usually will like type up a little page of notes that I'll like send over to you, just so that like you have it if you want to like look back on it, reflect on it, whatever.
Hmm.
But for you, and then for anyone who's watching, like the summary can be helpful sometimes. So I'm just gonna give like a little spiel real quick.
Okay.
So so the first thing that we talked about is that like sort of the main thing that like we came in to try to sort of like that I tried to sort of provide some value on is that you have these like big slumps where like all of a sudden like you really just don't feel like existing, like you just want to sort of hibernate, just like sleep, all your motivation is gone, you don't want to do anything. And like we were like, why is that happening? Let's try to figure out why that's happening and maybe like what we can do about it. And what we really got into was that in your childhood, not only were your parents, like you sort of grew up with your grandparents, you had this sort of like untraditional family, like you didn't really know who your dad was, like your parents were doing their best, but like they in a lot of ways they sort of you felt sort of like stifled by them because like you couldn't express yourself the way that you wanted to express. And so in school, like you would see these people that had these kids that had these more traditional households, and you'd be like, man, like I really want that. Or you would see like traditionally like popular pretty girls, and you'd be like, man, like I really want that. And like even with like your close friends, like you had one that was like a traditionally pretty popular girl, and you were like change me, teach me. And it sort of emerged into this pattern of like your whole like sort of identity was based on sort of just doing whatever was necessary to like fit in and to like try to get what those people had. And what you started to find was that like in retrospect is that it was always sort of artificial. It was always sort of fleeting. Like you would try it, and then like it would give you like sort of a temporary high, but then it would sort of fade away, and it wasn't authentic, and it didn't make you feel as good as you wanted it to. And so then all of a sudden in your 30s, sorry, I think that like a bug like flew up my nose, and it's like my eyes are going crazy right now. Um,
No, you're fine.
and so then, like, a switch flicked one day, and you were like, you know what? Like, I'm sick and tired of this. Like, I'm not even really getting what I want out of this. Like, I'm just gonna try to like be me. And so then all of a sudden, like, this exercise started of sort of like showing your like true self, like, hey, do you like this? And your true self would be like, yeah, I like that. And then you're like, okay, I'll keep it. We'll keep it. We'll play with it. And that is great, and also had its own sort of pitfall in that as you started doing that, your entire like consciousness or your entire identity would sort of slip into this new thing that was like it did authentically resonate with you. And at the same time, like by putting your entire identity into it, by putting your entire like consciousness into it, then like when people would come along and be like, hey, like I don't like that, you'd be like, oh, you don't like me, oh, I'm bad, oh no. And then like the theory is that would cause that's what causes the big slumps, is that you're just like, I don't even want to exist anymore because my entire identity is not like valid. And then you would sort of like hibernate until you could find like a new vessel to sort of fill. And so the like advice that I sort of offered was that the more that you can sort of notice when you're slipping into those skins and see if you can like detach and treat it as a separate object that your identity is like looking at, but that it is not intricately linked to, the less suffering you'll experience, and the more that you'll sort of the more that those slumps will sort of decrease. um Yeah, I think that's my spiel. The last little bit of my spiel is that for anyone watching, or for you, Moon, if you like this work, if you'd like to continue this work, I offer private versions of this that are paid. This is sort of like the one time free trial. But I offer private versions of this that are paid. So if you would like to continue this work, again, I'll send you like some information in the notes. But you're more than welcome to sign up. And for anyone who's watching, like if you'd like to sign up for a public one, I would love to talk to you. There was one other thing I wanted to say. Oh, it's gone. Anyway, so any last words before we say goodbye?
This was great. And
Good.
I don't know what I was nervous about, but
Good.
yeah.
That makes me so happy that like it's sort of like you were like, I don't even know why I was nervous because this was so nice. That's great. I love to hear that. I'm glad. Well, thank you for doing this for me. Like, I definitely am trying to provide value, but also like this is also helpful for me. So thank you for doing this for me.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Oh, that's what I was I remembered. Hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the things. Okay, that's it. All right. Goodbye, everybody.